Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a really fascinating artist, Heather James. We're starting with a premise that honestly challenges how you might think about urban living. What if your daily commute wasn't just, wasted time? What if it was actually a continuous 6-year research project? Our mission today is to explore how James uses art not just for expression, but really as a map, a survival tool, even a digital archive. And we're basing this on insights compiled by Ruth Stalker Firth.
It's a really interesting approach, isn't it? It moves the whole creative act away from the predictable studio setting and puts it right into the sort of chaotic flow of the city. This is definitely more than just visual documentation. It's about using that creative process itself as a way of, well, geographical and emotional orientation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that raises a key question for you, the listener, the learner here. How does that simple repeated act of drawing, how does it fundamentally change our cognitive relationship with geography? How does it turn raw observation into, well, genuine ownership, maybe even a sense of belonging?
Okay, so let's unpack that mechanism a bit. We're essentially tracing a career where an immediate, almost accidental need like sketching during a commute. It just organically evolves into this huge multi-year documentary project. And it connects physical space with a really profound personal story.
Precisely. The central idea here, I think, is that the cumulative action, the observing, the sketching, encoding those spatial details, that action is what matters, maybe even more than the finished piece itself in some ways.
Right. So let's rewind a bit. Back to 1979, James had just graduated from Bath Academy of Art. She was new to London. And like pretty much anyone commuting in London, she found herself spending a lot of time waiting for trains, traveling on trains. So she started sketching the city life she saw every day.
Yeah, and what started as maybe a coping mechanism, it quickly became a form of mastery. She was pretty upfront that her initial motivation was purely practical, just distraction from the, and I quote, tedium of standing around waiting for trains.
Ha! Relatable.
Totally. But the outcome was transformative. By forcing herself to really pay attention, to capture the details, suddenly the scale of this sprawling metropolis started to make sense.
I think that is the core insight we need to focus on for a moment. She had this personal realization, this epiphany, that she had effectively learned to navigate her way around London by drawing it. It wasn't the official maps or the tube signs necessarily. It was the process of her drawing the connections herself.
That realization is so powerful because it really shows how the brain encodes information differently when there's an active output required. A passive observation lets us recognize landmarks maybe, but active drawing, that forces you to measure, to relate textures, lines, distances. It's kind of accelerated spatial learning.
Right.
Drawing forced her to understand how the city's, disparate parts physically connected.
Yeah.
And that helped her find her place, her own story within that huge, complex geography.
It creates this really compelling feedback loop, doesn't it? The drawing helps the exploration gives her subject matter, and then the familiarity she gains informs the art itself, giving her this unique personal perspective on London.
We should probably also note, just quickly, the breadth of her artistic scope even then. These early works, they focused largely on the outdoors, but they ranged pretty widely. You had traditional realistic landscapes, but also much more abstract, expressive images.
So not locked into one style.
Not at all. She seems to let the work develop organically. She even said she can never predict whether the end result will be strictly representational or lean more towards the abstract.
That flexibility, valuing the process of discovery over some kind of rigid, predetermined outcome, that seems to be a real through line in her work. And that spontaneous exploratory drawing practice, what she called drawing on the hoof, that was really just setting the stage, wasn't it? For her next massive undertaking, this time in the digital sphere.
Absolutely. It established the methodology, you could say.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 2005, she revisited that feeling, that whole idea she got from drawing on the hoof. But this time, the project was apparently inspired by observing the writer Marta Szabo. Szabo was blogging her book as she wrote it, letting the community follow her creative path.
Oh, interesting. So James decided to take her own physical journey and translate that onto a digital platform. She set up the blog, Drawing My Way Around London. And her goal was incredibly specific. Document every single station along the North London line, which back then ran from North Woolwich way out in the east all the way to Richmond in the west.
Yeah, huge stretch of London.
And this wasn't a quick project either. This meticulous station-by-station journey took 6 years to complete.
6 years. I mean, that level of commitment is immense. It's a real testament to sustained artistic discipline. But what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how the project grew beyond just personal documentation. It actively fostered a community.
How so?
Well, as she posted each drawing and blogged about the experience of, that specific station or that locale, she started attracting quite a following.
Right, and the response from her audience wasn't just like technical critique, was it? People weren't just saying nice drawing. They were leaving comments describing the feelings her art stirred up in them. Things like memories, nostalgia, their own connections to that particular bit of the line.
She basically turned a solo documentation project into this kind of massive shared virtual expedition. And that community engagement was crucial. It solidified friendships.
Ah.
She became really good friends with Marta Sarbo, the writer who inspired her.
Mm.
And it also created a space for her to start mentoring younger artists who were drawn to her, well, unique and methodical approach.
It really highlights the power of structured, detailed documentation when you make it public, especially in the digital age. And crucially, once that epic 6-year project was finally done, she compiled the whole thing. The entire effort went into an ebook, Drawing My Way Around London.pdf, and she made it available for free download on her website, which is great.
Yeah, a complete, accessible public record of this huge personal and geographical journey. A perfect example, really, of the digital medium helping to share a physically demanding analog process far and wide.
So that 6-year project was very much about charting structure, mastering navigation. But then that led her to a profoundly different kind of documentary work. A real shift, actually, from mapping connectivity to, well, mapping destruction. We jump ahead now to 2015, where she took on what she called the 805 Steps Project.
Right, and the context here is absolutely key. This project was super local, hyper-local even, focused just on 805 steps along the towpath of the Hertford Union Canal in Hackney Wick. And her mission this time, it wasn't exploration in the same way, it was explicit documentation. Her goal was to record the views before they were, quote, destroyed by developers' bulldozers.
Wow, so that really transforms the art into an act of almost historical preservation. She's using her practice as a kind of visual timestamp during this period of really intense societal and urban change. What exactly was happening in Hackney Wick around then?
Well, this is where the context gets pretty stark. The area had previously been known as, a deprived industrial area. But its character has shifted. It started being praised for its arty, edgy vibe, which, as we know, is often the classic precursor to rapid gentrification.
Right, the writings on the wall.
Exactly. It was very quickly being transformed into these vast housing estates, expensive high-rise flats.
And there was an irony she captured, wasn't there, about the new buildings?
Yes, fascinating. She noted that these new luxury buildings, the ones replacing the old industrial architecture, they often ended up resembling the factories they replaced. Only now they were these sealed, often unaffordable residential towers. So the art becomes this kind of memorialization of a lost community almost, set against this wave of corporate erasure.
What's striking here is how the documentation itself feels like an act of quiet resistance.
I think so. She spent the entire spring and summer documenting this incredibly rapid change, blogging her experiences along the way. And her exhibition method for the drawings that came out of it was equally unconventional.
Yeah, tell us about that. It wasn't in a gallery, was it?
No, the artwork was displayed directly on the walls of a building, right there on the towpath, the very environment she was documenting.
Wow.
It creates this incredibly powerful, immediate connection. The artwork sort of avoids the neutrality of a gallery space. It's installed right within the physical landscape it captures, making the space itself both the subject and the stage. Really effective.
Okay, let's maybe pivot slightly now and talk about the broader philosophy that seems to underpin these big projects. Because while these epic documentations really define her career in many ways, James apparently prefers painting and printing generally, though she does take on occasional craft projects too.
And she seemed to really enjoy learning new skills, things like bookbinding, lino printing. She humorously noted that she wants to acquire skills that will keep me busy into my old age.
Aha, a good plan.
It is. But that emphasis on continuous learning and process is crucial, I think. And we see that the value for her often lies in the commitment to the process itself, even if the work never reaches some kind of official public completion. She mentions a project, the Book of Hours, a concept that currently only exists in my imagination and in the pages of a sketchbook.
Right, so it might never become a published volume?
Maybe not, but the internal narrative, the exploration happening in the sketchbook, that is the successful output for her, it seems. The process is the point.
Storytelling, both internal and external, is clearly the engine driving her work. She sells her art on platforms like Folksy and SecuArt, and apparently she actively seeks out her customers' interpretations, wants to hear their stories.
Yeah, by documenting and painting her own journey, her own story, she gives others a chance to connect their story to her work. It's also worth noting her works are held in private collections all over the world: Canada, the USA, Australia.
And this focus on process over formal exhibition led to a really pragmatic approach sometimes, didn't it? Like with that 2018 piece, Your Vote is Priceless.
Ah, yes, that's a perfect illustration. This work was created for a planned exhibition. It was commemorating 100 years of women's suffrage. But, unfortunately, the exhibition itself didn't end up happening.
That must happen quite often, actually. A real challenge for artists.
Yeah.
You make the work for a specific show, and then the show gets canceled. So how did she handle losing that formal exhibition space?
Well, quite simply, she just showed the piece to a few people, one person at a time.
Mm,
Her summary of the experience was wonderfully direct and, well, practical, she said. And that has been its exhibition.
just like that.
Just like that. She didn't seem to mourn the lost opportunity. She valued the private, individual interaction with the viewer. The one-on-one viewing was enough. It served its purpose.
That pragmatic creativity, it brings us quite naturally to the role of community and mentorship in her practice, doesn't it? She clearly doesn't work in a vacuum. She's highly active in the art collective E9 Makers and the Hackney Wick Life Drawing Group. And she uses these spaces as essential places to meet fellow artists, learn new skills, and constantly refine the old ones.
Yeah, and this points to a really deep-seated belief she seems to hold. She feels it's just as important to receive mentoring as it is to give it, ensuring this sort of cyclical exchange of knowledge and ideas.
And her mentoring circle started incredibly early, didn't it? Right at home.
Yes, her very first mentor was her mother, who apparently fostered just boundless imagination. She recalls her mother making her dressing up clothes, specifically mentioning a red and gold cloak that James used interchangeably as a skirt, a blanket, and a tent.
Uh-huh. That's brilliant. A very early lesson in creative adaptability.
Exactly. How a single item can morph into three different functions based purely on imagination and need. It really highlights a resourcefulness that you can see defining her later projects, too.
And there was that anecdote about her early DIY approach to fashion trends as well. When Skoll sandals were popular, apparently she didn't have any, so she just created her own version from cardboard, glitter, and felt tip pen.
Cardboard skull sandals. I love that. What's important about that story, I think, even though she notes they only survived for about a week.
Probably optimistic.
Probably. But it's the immediate impulse to create, to make, to replace. It's a philosophy of, like, prototyping, failure, and immediate iteration that seems built into her from childhood.
And this emphasis on a holistic, supportive relationship carries on today. Her current mentor is Marie Cole of We Clothing. They discuss practicalities, business strategies, creative ideas, where to sell their work. They've even traded at markets together.
Right, so it's a relationship that really integrates the creative heart with the, commercial necessities of being a working artist.
Okay, so we've tracked her career from that spontaneous, almost essential self-mapping back in 1979 through to a massive 6-year documentary project, and then on to creating this visual memorial to a neighborhood facing erasure in 2015.
So if we try and pull this all together, connect it to the bigger picture, Heather James's career really provides a powerful case study for you, the learner. It shows us how documenting movement, whether it's the predictable infrastructure of a rail line or the unpredictable rapid movement of gentrification, how that becomes this profound, ongoing way to solidify and understand your own place in a pretty volatile world.
Yeah, she achieved a kind of mastery of her geography by actively mapping it herself rather than just relying on external guides like maps.
Exactly. The physical action of drawing seems fundamentally tied to her memory and orientation.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? Well, Heather James successfully turned urban infrastructure, rail lines, canal towpaths, even those canceled exhibitions, into these highly personalized, published narratives. And she used digital platforms brilliantly to share that documentation widely and build a real community around it.
She literally learned to navigate London by drawing it. And she shared that entire process, didn't just show the end result. She inspired a community through her blog and continues to share through social media, Ko-Fi, Bluesky, YouTube. Her journey is still ongoing and public.
Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to consider. If James's technique back then was spontaneous drawing on the hoof during her physical, sort of industrial age commute, what's the modern equivalent for us now? How might documenting our digital commutes our routines across specific apps, content streams, virtual platforms. How might that help us understand our place in the virtual metropolis? Much like James came to understand London, how do you map your own digital territory?